Today we're gonna do a different kind of video. I'm going to be building a drone and a freestyle drone 6S with the Nord5 frame and some very interesting parts that I have been collecting to do kind of the best freestyle drone that I can do right now. So if we check some of the parts that I have here with me, you see that I have the Nord5 frame. I've printed some parts in this transparent color to see how cool it looks like. I got these new motors from Flyfish, Flash motors. I'm going to be installing a unit because I found one cheap and good. And I'm going to be using this tag that I talked about before. In my channel I have both the ESC and the FC from Speedybee, and I'm going to be putting it on this drone. Of course, before starting to build this, I have to say thank you to my sponsors, and let's give them 30 seconds right now. Do you need a good service to print your circuit boards? I'm sure PCBWay will have the right solution for you at the best price. They don't only have different kinds of PCB like Flex PCB and Advanced PCB, but now you can get your circuit boards with higher TG at the same price. Imagine that. Remember, PCBWay can help you with many other services. Go and visit them at their website. And right now it's the 8th anniversary and have a lot of promotions ongoing. We're going to start by building the frame. This frame is very special in the sense of it has a very quality and good cable management system, but because of that you have to plan your building and you have to put some cables and some parts in advance, so then you can keep building and everything is in the right place. The smallest screws are M3-9, and that's where we're going to start the build, together with some of this. Here it comes one of those moments that you have to plan. The idea is that in this hole you have some of the cables that you're going to be using, like for example the one that goes from the camera all the way to the Vista or the Air unit. That cable should be in place before I actually attach this part and screw this part, because otherwise you can do it later if you want, but it's going to be much more difficult to get the cable and the coaxial connector or the MIPI connector, whatever you call it, through this hole here. So again, that hole is for the cable, for some of the cables, but they have to be put in place before you assemble the next layer. The screws are gonna have the stack should also be in place before we attach these two parts. So in my case, I'm going to be using, as I said, this stack that I got from Speedybee, and I'm going to be using these holes for that stack. You have some flexibility on this frame that you can choose small or bigger stacks, but you have to choose right before putting these screws in place. Also, something that I've noticed when building these ones is that sometimes you have stacks that are a little bit taller, and you have to make sure that they fit with these screws, otherwise you have to replace these screws for longer ones. You see, in this case, this stack doesn't fit correctly if I use these screws, because then I don't have anything where I can lock them here. So I need to change the screw for something a little bit longer so I can have my stack in place. Actually, I realized that this one had enough space, but the rubber was very tall. So what I did was just to cut the rubber a little bit. We still have enough space there, and I can put the nuts on top of it and push the rubbers a bit more. As I was saying, it requires a little bit of planning. Both cables, I'm putting it before attaching the plate. That's the best way to do it. It's a very good idea to have Loctite on the screws, especially those ones holding the arms. As you've seen, I put in both screws, or in both screws per arm. So don't forget to have your Loctite in there. Just remember that Loctite is not good when the screw is going through plastic. So don't use it if you're going to go, like for example, through the motors, or sorry, through the TPU or the plastic that is attaching the motor. Be careful with that. Going to prepare the length for the motors, the length for the cables of the motors. One thing I like to say is that I find this sticky rubber that is so useful. I use it all the time to hold pieces and help me with my builds. Here you see, now I have the 4 motors in place. They are soldered. The XT60 is also soldered, and I have my capacitor in. The cables are in place, so I can put my air unit in there. It's just to continue building. It's looking good. I'm liking this board a lot because the way that it's designed and it's trying to help you, you see here, for example, you have 9 volts ground, VTX, T1 and R1, and they are kind of grouped by this dotted line, telling you you can use that space. For example, in my case for the air unit, where I would like very much to use the 9 volt BEC that we have on this flight controller. And then I can use T1 and R1 for my SMP. The same, if you look at other places here in this board, you see they divide them, they group them with these dotted lines around, telling you that you can use that for your receiver or anything else. Very well made this. If you look also, the connectors have glue around, helping you support them, because many times when you are flying or something, like they break. Nice car. Something that could be good at this point is actually to check if we have any kind of shorts. Since we have connected the motors and the XT and the XT60 and the capacitor, and that we can do quickly with our multimeter. There is no short here. That at least is a good sign. For the receiver, I'm going to be using this one here, R3T3, because it fits better with the layout. So let's prepare that area. Let's prepare the Vista area as well, or air unit in our case. The receiver cables, I'm taking it down through this hole here, and the receiver is gonna sit in this space that we have for the pouch. So the cable's length is fine here, and I can solder the receiver already. I'm using one Express ELRS 2.4 receiver, which is small enough for me to fit in here, so I can actually solder it now and then I can put it in the hole. But depending on the receiver that you're using, you have to be aware of that, because if you want to have it on the pouch and the receiver is bigger, then it might not fit through the hole, and you have to solder after you have the receiver on the other side. Remember, T from flight controller to R from the receiver, and R from flight controller to T of the receiver. We have the receiver soldered now. And good practice, let's check for shorts. All right, no shorts, good. Ideally, you will be using this contact for the air unit, but I don't have a long enough cable with the contact, and I don't have to make the contact by itself, so I'm going to solder it. Not a big problem. What you have to pay attention to is again this RX to TX and TX to RX. That's the only thing to be careful with. So when it comes to soldering, we're done. Now we have to finish building the whole drone. In the Nord5 frame, we have done it so when you use these squids that we have here, the screw length that we have included in the package is the right one for most of the motors, 2206, 2207 or 2306. But you have always to check that the screw doesn't go all the way to the wires of the motor, because then you have a short and you are screwed. So pay attention to that. The screws that we include in the package normally have Loctite pre-applied, which is good because, again, as I said before, You shouldn't have Loctite when you have a plastic part, or you shouldn't have this kind of fresh Loctite when you have a plastic part. It would eat it. But it's good to have pre-applied Loctite because the motors will have vibrations and you don't want the screws to just fall apart. You see here that I go all the way in, but there is no screw coming out or touching the wires of the motors. The Nord5 frame also has something that we believe is pretty important, and it's these parts in plastic. They are not made on TPU because we are trying to avoid vibrations. These parts are made on nylon reinforced, either with glass or with carbon fiber. That makes it very hard, very strong, but at the same time we avoid having those vibrations so we don't have to, or we don't want to have when flying. One thing to take into consideration when building with this frame is the fact that the space between the plate, the camera plate, and let me see if I can focus. The camera plate and the standoff, it's minimal. So these standoffs are made specially for this, and they have to be polygonal, so the flat side of the polygon it's facing the plate. If you use a round, or if you don't have the flat side and you have only the pointy side of the standoff, you're not going to have enough space to have the front plate in good position. So make sure that when you're building it, you have the flat space of the both standoff facing the plate, so you can actually have it in and put it all the way without any problem. There are many ways to install the RX or the receiver antenna if you have, and all of them depends on the shape of the antenna that you have. So we have left these two holes in here. You can use a zip tie to have the antenna closed if you have, for example, the Immortal T. We also have a few different mounts, 3D printed mounts that you can use depending on, again, on the shape of the antenna, and I'm going to be using this antenna from GEPRC. So I'm thinking that I'm going to use one of these 3D printed parts, and I'm going to get my antenna to go through the hole and just have it in there. Now I can install this 3D printed part that is like a pouch there, and it has the cables and the different things like the receiver inside. We're almost ready to close it, but I always want to check for short circuits. This is a good time to do it before closing. Good. All right, now it's done. Nord5 completely built. Thank you for watching and see you soon.